having gone the route of civil engineering and with a bachelor's and then master's in architectural engineering, you would think that I should be satisfied at that point. But I couldn't be satisfied because the fire had burnt. You see, I was the admirer of two particular people at that time. One called Booker T. Washington, and one called Marcus Garvey. In the reverse, Garvey first and then Washington. Garvey because in my household, Garvey was the word next to the deity. And the relationship between Garvey and Booker T had become so close that I too followed the teachings and philosophical concept of the late Honorable Booker T. Washington. But within that philosophy was something else both men always taught: the integrity of the individual. And the integrity of the individual refused, in my case, to accept lies, such as Benny Goodman is the king of swing, and Duke Ellington must have been the emperor of swing. Chick Webb, having taught Gene Krupa, I was told that Gene Krupa is the best on the drum, but he went to Chick Webb to get to be the best on the drum. I don't know if you know Chick Webb, you know Ella Fitzgerald. Chick taught her. I just throw that in to show you that the lie doesn't stop in ancient time. It continues up to today.
In Dr. Yusuf Ben-Jochannan's speech, Black Man Wake Up, he explores the historical relationship between Marcus Garvey and Booker T. Washington, two influential figures in Black empowerment. Dr. Ben-Jochannan explains that both men significantly shaped his thinking, particularly the emphasis on self-reliance, education, and African pride. Garvey, with his vision of Pan-Africanism, and Washington, with his focus on industrial education, encouraged Black people to reject the colonial mentality and pursue autonomy and dignity.
And so in my further examination, I was dealing with 3.14. All of you here in engineering knows what it's supposed to symbolize. They say it's pi. And I was taught that it came from the Greeks. And you know, I believed it. What else could I do? The teacher told me. And then when I went to Ethiopia and to Egypt and to Nubia, in the ancient records of the ancient Africans of the Nile Valley Africans, there was pi being used 2,000 years before there was such a place as Greece. The first writer of Greece that brought Greece into civilization, because they said the demarcation between uncivilized and civilized have to do with the time when you start writing history, they call it, prehistoric and historic. And Homer is the Greek first writer. And Homer said that even the concept of God, Zeus and Apollo, came from Ethiopia. So when you get in the Greek fraternities and sororities, just remember what Homer said. You must have dealt with the Iliad and the Odyssey by now. But again, I understand. You see, you have been taught by Alex Haley and others that your history started in the slave trade. But they don't even tell you how the slave trade started. They blame you for enslaving yourself. They say your ancestors sold you out. Nice statement. So I asked the guy, what country, what was the name of the king? Oh, don't worry about that, they sold you out. As if I don't know that the slave trade started with the Pope of the Roman Catholic Church by the name of Martin V. And Reverend Bartolomeo de las Casas on the island of Hispaniola now called Haiti and St. Domingo. You see, nobody told you it's time to get sorry, to feel bad when some Haitians were being slaughtered on the coast of Florida. That's what it is. If you send a people back to sea on the condition where they were, that's genocide. But you see, you didn't feel anything because you weren't taught to realize that the Haitians are your brothers and sisters, because you don't know that the first Africans to be brought in slavery was not taken from Africa, but from Spain and carried to Haiti, then called Hispaniola, in 1506, under the aegis of the Pope of the Roman Church and Bartolomé de las Casas. But how did you get in Spain? That was 1506. But you went into Spain, which was then called Iberia, Spain and Portugal and southern France, as conquerors yourself in 711, under the leadership of Tariq, for whom the Rock of Gibraltar is now named Gibraltaric. Nothing in your education, because there's nothing in your textbooks about any of this. So you'll have to go to Spain. Luckily, at the University of Barcelona, where I attended for 2 years, there are these documents, and I had never known anything about them. I hadn't known that the Africans called Moors had ruled Spain from 711 until 1485. The last of them losing power at a place called Granada. I was always wondering, why is it that 90% of all the songs coming out of Spain was singing to La Morena, the black woman? So how come in this country 90% of all the songs, the records, the tapes, everything is La Morena this and La Morena that? It is when I went there I found out La Morena raised hell in Spain. She's still raising hell in Montgomery, Alabama, and in Tuskegee, Alabama, and in Tuskegee Institute. I could look around and see her. Of course, the first one of you threw a good baseball and a good basketball, forget that she could raise hell. You don't want her for a wife anymore. You hit the numbers, you don't want her for a wife. Some of you forget you look like your mama. Sorry, fellows. Try one, it may be good for your health. But we must go back and ask ourselves, why is this so? And I said to the students today at the high school, even the paper you write on shows your heritage and your history. It was in Egypt, Ethiopia, and Sudan that the first papyrus paper was created, not rice paper in China. Just as it was in Egypt that engineering, Sesostris II, you are engineers, many of you, Sesostris II, changed the flow of the Nile. That S-turn you see there was placed there by African engineers in 2250 BC. There was no Jesus yet. No Adam and Eve story yet, because that came out of the Sanhedrin in 700 BC, just yesterday, when the African engineers was changing the flow of the Nile. Hydrographic engineering, there was no Adam, no Eve yet. No Jehovah, because Abraham, the first Jew that brought out the concept of a Jehovah, wasn't even born. The Africans had already worshipped Ptah, P-T-A-H. Amin-Ra. You still say Amin at the end of each prayer, and they told you it means so be it. That's a lie. Amin was the god of the north. When Scorpio, the pharaoh, headed the north, and Egypt was divided into two groups. It had gone into a civil war. And Mena, or Nama, was the king of the south, and his god was Ra. The conquest of Mena over Scorpion allowed Mena to join God Amen with God Ra and call Amen Ra. Thousands of years before there was a Jehovah, Jesus, or Allah. Muhammad ibn Abdullah wasn't born until 570 of the Christian era. Pontius and Boetius, that started Christianity, wasn't born until 50 AD, according to the story. And Abraham, who started the concept of a God named Jehovah and Adam and Eve's story, wasn't born until 1760 BC. The Africans of Egypt and Ethiopia and Nubia were already in their 13th dynastic period. No different than the lie they told us that the Jews built the pyramids. Which one? The little one in their bathtub? There are 72 pyramids throughout Egypt. The first one was designed, engineered, and built by the multi-genius, first one known in the world, Imhotep. That was the third dynasty. The last one was the sixth dynasty, and the first Jew wasn't born until the 13th dynasty. You can't build a pyramid before you're born. But the myth and the lie continues. Now they're even making people from outer space build the pyramids from the top down. Those of you who are engineering knows how they build it from the top down. They took the first stone with some skyhook and connected it to the cloud passing by. I'm not supposed to speak about these things. Oh, I'm supposed to be glad somebody give me a piece of goat skin with a thing on it that said PhD twice. And I'm supposed to be so good. I got one of the goat skin, PhD, all in Latin. Feel good, ain't it? Different person. My mother isn't my mother anymore. My father isn't my father anymore. Black folks are not related to me anymore. I'm Greek, Dutch, Japanese, whatever else. I am Rainbow Coalition now. I don't talk to my cousin anymore. They can't sit at my table at the college anymore because I'm Abba Dabba Labba Labba fraternity. Oh, the things we go through. All to keep us from the Pan-African concept. You know, when I heard that in, I think it was Selma, Alabama, or Montgomery, that 6 little black girls were blown up. I heard you vote for the guy the other day. Blown up in a little temple, in a little Baptist temple. Tears ran down my eyes. Because my girls, I got 9, were blown up. When theirs were blown up. When they were blown up, mine, it was my children blew up. How could I sit in my living room in New York and felt comfortable knowing? You see, people don't want me to feel. If you kill one European Jew in Ushkush because he is Jewish, the whole white Jewish community getting armed. But if you kill umpteen blacks, I am not supposed to say anything, otherwise I'm being racist. You see, they didn't tell you that there are black people who are Jews. So you say blacks and Jews are going to have a conference. Couldn't be blacks Jews too? Or you never heard of the Falashas, the Ethiopian Jews? I'm one. I know that I don't look Jewish, but they don't look Jewish to me either. But this, you see, is rough stuff. Because I'm dealing with things that you are not supposed to hear or deal with. Tomorrow there's going to be a question and answer period, and all who don't agree with it could ask their question and make their comment. They shouldn't wait till tomorrow when I'm gone and sneakily run and tell you, I knew better. They are called the Falashas, but you didn't hear anyone saying anything in America when the Italian fascists were exterminating the Falashas. Nobody said anything. And it was the forerunner to what Hitler was to come and do next. But there was no rallying cry about my people. We were 5 million when Mussolini arrived. With the help of the Pope, Pius XI, I think it was. When the Italians left, we were 50,000. But no cry. Isn't it strange that when you write and when you are taught, you hear only about a Holocaust? One. What happened to your Holocaust that's still going on? What happened to the 50 million Africans, your brothers and sisters, that were murdered in Munamatapa, now called South Africa, under Cecil John Rhodes? Do you know that black folks take scholarship in honor of John Rhodes, Cecil John Rhodes? Because you don't know. Nobody told you who Rhodes was. Rhodes make Hitler look like a playboy. You don't know about the Holocaust with Frederick Lugard and Dr. Jameson in what is today called Nigeria, with Goldie and others when they took over the colony. You don't know about the Holocaust with Leopold II, the Vanderbilts and the Pews and the others, the Rockefellers and so forth, when they took over what was called Manicongo in those days and changed it to the Congo Free State. How many millions? 22 million were exterminated. African women pregnant were placed in the middle of roads, and 3 limbs put to both arms, and then cut with the horses and split them open, and the babies fell out as punishment that the men would see it. These are records. They themselves wrote, not realizing that Africans will come later to revenge these causes. But that isn't mentioned as Holocaust in any of your textbooks, because it was only Africans being exterminated. I don't expect enemies to say this, but I do expect that when you write and when you do your research that you use the appropriate term, genocide, Holocaust, wherever it applies. In Tasmania, an island off Australia, every last African was murdered. There isn't one left. And you don't call it a Holocaust. And you don't cry about it. You don't get up any day complaining. Nobody comes to you and asks you, but you cry for everybody else's Holocaust. Because you weren't taught that these people had anything at all to do with you. You forget that the slave boat did not come from Africa to America. It came from Africa to the Caribbean, from the Caribbean to America. The first boat that brought Africans here were not from Africa, but from Barbados. The first that came to Virginia in 1619 in Jamestown. So you weren't told that there's any connection. As a matter of fact, the people from Alabama don't feel anything for the people of New Jersey, and the people of New Jersey don't feel anything for the people of Mississippi, etc., etc. We have not been taught that way.
Dr. Ben-Jochannan reflects on how he, like many others, was initially miseducated with the Eurocentric version of history, which distorted and diminished the achievements of African civilizations. His worldview changed dramatically after visiting the Nile Valley, where he uncovered the rich legacy of African innovation. He asserts that much of the foundation of Western civilization, including philosophy, religion, and technological advances, originated in Africa. This influence, he notes, extends to Greek civilization, with even the Greek historian Homer acknowledging that Greeks' concept of God came from Ethiopia. The speech highlights several key points, including the fact that African history did not begin with slavery. Dr. Ben-Jochannan stresses that the transatlantic slave trade was a tragic episode, but not the entirety of African history. He points out that Africans had already made significant contributions to the world, such as conquering Spain in 711 AD, long before the arrival of the first African slaves in Haiti, who were taken from Spain under a papal proclamation. Dr. Ben-Jochannan emphasizes that the true history of African people has been purposefully hidden to create feelings of inferiority among Black people. He challenges the Eurocentric narrative by pointing to the ancient civilizations of the Nile Valley, where Africans were pioneers in papermaking, writing, and engineering. These civilizations, he argues, were highly innovative and technologically advanced, long before the birth of Abraham, further debunking the myth that Africa contributed little to world civilization. Through this speech, Dr. Ben-Jochannan calls for a reawakening among Black people to reclaim their history and heritage, and to dismantle the lies that have been perpetuated to suppress their greatness.